What is the definition of a hero? We hear the word on a constant basis, but what does it mean to be a hero? What does one look like? And are you one? Growing up, our fathers would tell us to stand strong and be brave. Our mothers taught us to protect the weak and to be compassionate. Our religions taught us to stand for justice. Our schools taught us to stand for freedom. Our books showed us how heroes behave and what they feel. Our television showed us a grim reminder of the heroes that would never make it back. We are all heroes, men, women, and children. We have been raised to think as heroes, to fight as heroes, and if necessary, to die as heroes. We are Americans. All we have ever needed was the spark necessary to light the flame within us. We are a nation of heroes. Within each of us burns the heart of a warrior. It is in our roots and in our history, and it's in our blood. It has been solidified in our hearts and minds. It is an ember that burns in our very souls, to defend the weak, to uphold justice, and protect freedom. Yet as heroes, would we know evil when we saw it? I imagine that all of us would like to think so. Would we know how to identify it? How would you recognize it? What would it look like? How do heroes know evil when they see it? What if heroes could be blind to evil because it partly represented some of their beliefs? No hero wants to think that they harbor some darkness inside themselves. Yet we all do, and that by itself does not make us evil. Evil is darkness in action. Carl Jung, an eminent philosopher and psychologist, believed in something called the shadow self. This self was responsible for harboring the negative aspects of our subconscious, and it is very frightening for us to face. When this shadow is not acknowledged, it can allow darkness to seep into action, and thus create evil. So how do we recognize evil? By acknowledging the darkness, admitting that darkness is possible within us, and by doing so, realizing that others may act on the same dark impulses. Temptation is only bad when you give into it. Many people do not have the strength of character needed to refuse temptation. It does not condone their actions, but it allows you to recognize good and bad working within others. With that in mind, how does evil look? Would it look like a demon with horns, or does it have a placid face? Would it be secretive or out in the open? We all know the best place to hide is in the open, so could it be there? Would they wear beards, or be clean-shaven, blonde or brunette, dark or light skin, tall or short, intelligent or unintelligible speech? Asking ourselves these questions leads us to the logical and methodical understanding of what evil can be. It can be anything, be anywhere, and wear any face. Contrast that understanding with what mainstream media, government, theater, and literature have taught us that evil is. Thinking in this manner will lift the veil away from the Wizard of Oz and reveal it for the carpetbagger that it is. However, it will take a heart, a home, a brain, and some nerve in order to see it for what it is. Evil could be anyone. Evil is not usually obvious to the public. Evil will not goose-step itself into public view. It won't wear an inverted swastika armband to identify itself to you. Evil is not going to show its hand before it's ready. All the more reason to see it before it does. Evil grows like a seed in the darkness, and when it is found enough fertile ground, it grows. Evil has its roots in greed, and that's how it perpetuates itself. It can be the corporations paying for lobbyists and media sponsorship. It can be people you thought you could trust to tell you the truth. It can be any government official or party affiliation who does not have its constituents' well-being at heart, but only their own. It can be religious leaders who preach their agenda from the pulpit, not for the betterment of the members, but for their own advancement. Evil, like a seed, can start from something small and unassuming in nature. It may even seem like something benevolent at first. An idea such as imposing a group's will on another through legislation can become virulent and malevolent. It could present itself as a solution to a supposed problem, oftentimes a problem that was created by the party that came up with the solution. Such an example would be the Federal Reserve, a private central bank which controls all money in America. Such seeds grow into giant redwoods that break, topple, and collapse under their own weight. It has happened countless times throughout history to every major empire, and it is happening to us. The more groups that require the government to make laws for them, to limit the liberties of others, the bigger the tree gets. Whenever government makes laws, it inhibits freedom. The less freedom a citizen has, the more power the government has. Why would the government want to inhibit liberty? Why would they want to destroy the Constitution? Think back to what the seed of evil is: greed. Who could provide the backing for that greed? Some would say the corporations, but that is only part of the picture. Who funds the corporations? The central bank, the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve, being a privately owned bank, and not a government institution, can print as much fiat money as it wants. When an American citizen makes copies of currency, this is called money laundering. However, when the Federal Reserve does this, it is called stimulus. They can print as much money as they want. They can devalue currency as they wish. This effectively makes the money you earn worth less each year. That is a lot of power. More power than any privately owned institution should have. Absolute power corrupts, absolutely, as the adage goes, and it is certainly true in this case. The Federal Reserve can print money at will and give this money to whomever they choose. In addition to this, since the Federal Reserve is a private bank, it prints this money for our government at a price. Let's say the price to print $1 is 5 cents. If you print 100 of these, then the government will owe the Federal Reserve $5. As you see, this effectively makes it impossible to ever pay the Federal Reserve back. In this way, they effectively own the government. Corporations need money to survive, especially when the economy is going bad due to a financial bubble that the Federal Reserve helped create. In a capitalist society, these businesses should be allowed to fail for their bad business practices. Instead, they are given money and propped up, but at a price. They owe the Federal Reserve for bailing them out, contractually and monetarily. Parts that aren't bailed out get sold off to the government or to other businesses. Since the corporations are indebted to the Federal Reserve, then they are also controlled by them. Yet this is only a part of the puppetry involved with controlling our government and our lives. We will have to look at the corporations themselves. Corporations are owned by big business, and they sponsor special interest groups. These corporations send lobbyists to bribe senators, representatives, and other politicians. It is illegal to bribe a police officer, but for some reason, it's okay to bribe a politician. When politicians receive bribes from lobbyists, it is the same understanding and relationship that the Federal Reserve and the corporations have. The politicians receive the money or other compensation from the lobbyists if they in turn promote policies, resolutions, and laws that benefit their specific corporation. The same is true of corporations that give massive funds to any campaign. They expect something in return for the money that they give to them, and that is their complete cooperation when making legislation. Assuredly, if there has been a politician that has flip-flopped on an issue, it has been because their benefactors have changed. This happens when one corporation or special interest presents the politician with more money than the other. This is how our laws and legislation comes about, not because of the will of the people, but because of the will of corporations and the central bank. The system currently in place is not a respecter of party affiliations. It readily gives bribes to both parties and campaigns with little prejudice to side. The only prejudice they portray is cosmetic, so they will fall in line with the hatred they have carefully constructed between the two parties. This is where the mainstream media comes in. They are a part of this entire process, but their job is slightly different. They are part of the corporate process, and that their sponsorship and advertisements are paid by corporations. The existence of mainstream media relies heavily on the money that they receive from corporations, and government laws can negatively affect them as well. They are put in a precarious situation, one that threatens their financial futures if they do not report the news the way their sponsors and benefactors wish. This is called propaganda. You cannot trust a source of information that is so easily influenced by outside sources. The Federal Reserve has control over corporations. Corporations have influence over government. Corporations and government have control over the mainstream media. The mainstream media has influence over all who watch them and believe them. The government has direct control over all American citizens. What does evil look like to you? Does it look like this? Could it be this? Think deeply. Look around you. Let the hero inside you observe the world around you. What does it tell you? Does it see the evil present? If so, the only thing left for a hero to do is to act. If most of us know that politicians lie, then why do we believe any of them? If we know that the media distorts the truth, then why do we watch them? If private corporations and banks are delegating American laws and policies, why do we allow it? If we know that the federal government holds its citizens to standards that they themselves do not uphold, then why do we not act? Why do the heroes of this nation remain silent? Why do American troops who fight and die to secure private corporations and banks' personal interests continue to fight? We are the hands and arms, legs and feet on the body of this beast. When the hands and arms stop moving, nothing can be produced. When the legs and feet stop moving, the body cannot move. The true terror that is in the heart of evil is that heroes will amass to end their tyranny. They, the few, know that the many will always have power over them if the many choose to unite together. That is why they have devoted so much time and effort within their hierarchy to make sure that the hands, arms, legs, and feet are continually fighting amongst each other. Think of the hands and arms as conservative, and the legs and feet as liberal for a moment. They take two groups, polarize them by implementing the mainstream media, and then use political figures to enrage them against each other. Divide and conquer. Using this analogy, do you see how they instigate and perpetuate hate between the two groups, or any groups, so that they will never unite together and oppose them? Great strides have been taken to keep our political climate polarized as two parties. This keeps the populace hating and opposing each other, which redirects the anger and opposition it would pose to them if the populace were unified. The two-party system is the noose that they have placed around the American citizens' neck to constrict their choices and levy their collective power against each other. One action that chains us to the government are the laws that we encourage them to make on our behalf to limit the freedoms of others. Another thing that chains us to them is our mandatory dependence on them, entitlement programs, jobs they create within the federal government, mandatory health care programs, devaluation of our currency, overriding states' rights, and varying laws and legislation all strive to make us dependent on the federal government. While we are beholden to them, they do not have to be beholden to us. We, as American citizens, have the power to cut them off at the knees and elbows. We alone have the power, but we have to encourage each other to have the heart, the know-how, and the courage to do so. It is not anti-government to be pro-liberty. We do not have to obey. We can resist. We are the heroes, and we do have a choice to make. We can stand together in freedom or stand separately in slavery. We do not have to subsist off of them. They subsist off of the American people. We can cast off the chains that serve to enslave us, to bind us and separate us. These chains have locks, but we have the keys. All we have to do is use them. We are a nation of heroes. If you are tired of servitude to the federal government, if you are tired of the evil parading as good, if you are tired of seeing our liberties taken away, and then stand with this nation of heroes to reclaim our rights. The crimes of this government have gone on for far too long. We have allowed too much to happen while we have looked the other way. That is not the path of heroes. That is the path of cowards and a defeated people. Every age requires its people to stand up in the defense of others, and that time is now. Those people are us. We have the power to force the federal government, the corporations, and central bank to be beholden to us. We can refuse, resist, and stand against them. We can refuse to help the federal government subjugate the people to its will. We can resist their claims on our liberty. We can stand against them as a nation of heroes. We are all heroes to somebody, and in this, we can be heroes to everybody. Take their locks and chains. Take the key that has been presented to you and free yourself and others from their tyranny. Be the hero that you were destined to be.